Following their triumphant return to the franchise with WWE 2K22, 2K Games and developer Visual Concepts managed to re-establish the sports entertainment series in the eyes of many as the head of the table when it comes to the modern-day wrestling video game experience. After WWE 2K22 built a strong and extremely necessary new foundation, last year's widely well-received WWE 2K23 very much capitalized on that momentum, making meaningful tweaks and improvements to the overall product that arguably saw the series at its best thus far. With WWE 2K24's March 8th release date rapidly approaching, I found myself wondering what could possibly be added to an already refined, enjoyable and successful formula that will make fans eager to delve into the next installment of the franchise. Well, once again we here at Cultaholic were very lucky enough to be invited down to Take-Two's offices in London to preview WWE 2K24 ahead of its launch. Having the opportunity to go hands-on with the game for a few hours, diving into some of the new match types on offer, as well as checking out this year's huge new Showcase of the Immortals mode. There was quite a bit to sink our teeth into this year, so let's just jump straight in and talk about how it feels to play. And it feels great, it really does. It doesn't deviate much from the previous two installments, but as I mentioned in my preview last year, that's not a bad thing in the slightest. WWE 2K23, for me personally, felt very tight, smooth and responsive, which in turn helped make matches feel more dynamic and exciting. 2K24 is more of that, but just better. However, that doesn't mean there aren't additions to this year's core systems that pepper in that extra little bit of immersion into the mix. Firstly, there's the ability to trade blows with your opponent, engaging in a turn-based punching minigame that sees players holding and releasing a button at the right moment within decreasing windows. These blows will continue back and forth until someone fails to hit the input correctly 3 times, resulting in either you or your opponent getting the advantage. Or, if you're a no-hit Dark Souls Master Pro gamer like me, hitting the extremely narrow golden window will instantly give you the upper hand. But again, that's only for pro gamers like me. Secondly, and my personal favourite, there is now the option for certain superstars to execute a super finisher. To hit one of these new manoeuvres though, players must first bank all 3 of their finishers, and when unleashed they deal a devastating amount of damage to an opponent. Super finishers also prevent the use of the resiliency payback perk for a brief period, making kickouts virtually impossible for those on the receiving end of one. The examples of these moves I got to see in my preview were an avalanche riptide by Rhea Ripley, the Cody Trinity, which is the 3 crossroads in succession, and Seth's springboard super stomp. Both additions greatly add to replicating the authenticity of the WWE products we see on TV. However, there's just something impressive that comes with the latter. Not only do they look great visually, but the gameplay possibilities could potentially change how you approach a match, especially if you're playing on a higher difficulty or even against someone who perhaps matches your skills in multiplayer. Will you strategically save up your finishers and stretch out the pace of a match to end in spectacular fashion, or will you and a friend be kicking out at 2.999 in a clash of close calls and false finishes? It's a welcome feature and a great way to help mix up the gameplay for those who find it perhaps a little too familiar. Moving on, let's talk about some of those new match types. This year's title will see 4 new modes introduced. You've got special guest referee, gauntlet matches, casket matches and ambulance matches, the latter of which was the only one available to us at the preview event. It's a very simple concept. No disqualification rules, but the only way to win is by weakening your opponent so much that you can throw them in the back of an ambulance, engage in a tense head-to-head button mashing minigame to close the doors and send them off to the local medical facility. With the ambulance stationary at ringside, you're free to fight around it, or, of course, you can get that little engine involved in the action. You can ascend the ladder found on the side of the vehicle, throw your opponent off the top, and even follow it up with a dive of your own onto the floor below if it so compels you. Not to mention, if you're looking for a change of scenery, you can even make your way to the backstage area and finish the match there. It almost feels like it harkens back to the hardcore modes of older wrestling games, and in some ways, it feels like WWE 2K24 is almost paying homage to those games of yore too. And by that, I mean there were several things throughout my time with the game that really made me feel as though I was a kid again playing the wrestling games I grew up loving. And it's not just specifically in the gameplay either, though we will get back to that again very shortly, but through some of the camera options visual concepts have allowed us to play with. Yes, we now have the ability to change to a ramp-facing camera, and although it's just a small addition, it may, as it did for me, transport you back to a different era reminiscent of the old SmackDown games. Said angle is perfect for such match types as the Royal Rumble, but it also allows you to appreciate the level of detail the developers have put into making the video walls and sets of the WWE look spectacular. And with this iteration being a celebration of WrestleMania throughout its 40 years, I think it's a great way for us to admire these sets recreated in all their glory. Now, heading back for a moment to that backstage area that you can brawl through in the ambulance match, yes, the backstage brawl also makes a return. However, this time with some notable updates and tweaks. It feels more expansive this year, which is perfect for the now featured and chaotic 4-player support. There are all new environmental objects to interact with, an elevator that takes you to the upper levels without having to climb those ladders, breakable glass, vending machines, along with new weapon types like trash cans, beverages, guitars, microphones that you now have the ability to satisfyingly throw at your opponent. There's just something very fun and joyful about all of this that you can't help but smile about when playing, especially as you launch a chair towards someone's head. It's very funny, yes. Enough though about my apparent lust for blood, which is, by the way, also slightly improved upon as the crimson stuff can now spill onto your chest and even onto the canvas, given you keep targeting the head. Let's move on. Let's move on to the big central feature of WWE 2K24 this year, the celebration of 40 years of WrestleMania, aptly dubbed Showcase of the Immortals. This mode takes you through key historic matches that have taken place on the grandest stage of them all, of which I got to play through 3. Cody Rhodes versus Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 39, Rhea Ripley versus Charlotte Flair at WrestleMania 39 2, and Ultimate Warrior versus Rick Rude at WrestleMania 5. Brilliantly narrated by Corey Graves, some very well-produced vignettes welcome us to the showcase mode, as well as give us the important context and history surrounding the matches and stars we're about to engage with. And as for the gameplay itself, players will find the familiar objective-based tasks remain, but with one small yet welcome change fans have been calling out for. Showcase mode now shows the button commands on screen for the maneuvers the game is asking you to accomplish. This means no more pulling you out of the action to view the pose menu and learn how to pull off certain moves. Instead, the commands are perfectly displayed on the screen as you play, allowing you to stay fully immersed in what's happening on screen with no interruption. It's a small, teeny tiny change, but it makes a huge difference in the moment. Whereas we've become somewhat used to the singular focus of one specific superstar for prior showcase modes, 2K24 opts to be much broader in its scope. Whilst in some ways we saw glimpses of this playing as John Cena's adversaries in some of his biggest losses throughout his career in 2K23, there's just something fresh and grander about this approach of being able to play as a wider range of male and female talent, swapping between controlling the roles of heels and babyfaces throughout WWE and WrestleMania's history, which is appropriate given the spectacle of the source material. The slingshot technology makes its return, seamlessly weaving gameplay into real-life footage of the matches and back to the gameplay again, as well as unlocking alternate outfits and arenas for those who wish to complete each and every match objective, which is a great incentive to really spend time with the mode and explore all it has to offer. So far, it truly does feel like the best presentation of a showcase mode to date, and with some of the other matches teased in the opening vignette that we'll seemingly be able to play, of which I cannot talk about here or I will get shot, there's going to be some exciting moments for fans to recreate, reminisce, and get stuck into. And since we're on the topic of presentation, what's the presentation like overall? Well, lighting, updated facial animations, entrances, real referees. Yes, there's Charles Robinson and Jessica Carr that I saw. Apparently there's a lot more as well. Title belts, improved commentary, and a noticeable lack of clipping regarding hair and clothing. It just all looks great. It really does. Visual concepts have clearly taken on board the criticisms fans have had in the past with certain aspects and improved upon them vastly. Some might not be perfect, but at least it's noticeable, which shows progression and a willingness to take on board suggestions from the community. And I feel that was the theme throughout my time with the game, just progression. Overall, I had such a fun time playing WWE 2K24. While an incremental step forward, it builds and iterates upon what was already a strong formula with the previous two entries, yet provides us with a hefty amount of modes and features that make it feel justified in being its own title, which can be a tough balance to find in regards to annualized video games. But those are just my thoughts and first impressions on but a small yet meaty taste of what 2K24 has in store for us next month. Let me know down below in the comments whether you're excited for its release and what you're looking forward to about it the most. Until next time, I've been Andrew from Cultaholic Wrestling, and it's been a pleasure. Take care. Toodles!